And we think in Revelation chapter 11, verse 2 to 12, deals with the two witnesses. And I'm among those that believe Elijah is one of those two witnesses, and I'll show you why here in a minute. Now, these two witnesses are subject to, it's a kind of an important piece, so let's insert this here. In Revelation 11, verse 5 and 6 says, if any man will hurt them, fire proceedeth out of their mouth and devoureth their enemies. Wow. If any man will hurt them, he must in this manner be killed. These have the power to shut heaven, that it rain not in the days of their prophecy. And they have the power over the waters to turn them to blood, and to smite the earth with all plagues as often as they will. As you analyze this list of powers that the two witnesses have, you quickly discover they are unique to two people. Two of these powers are unique to Elijah. Two of these powers are unique to Moses. And so that's one of the reasons, that's probably the clearest reason why I think the identity of the two witnesses are forthright. It's interesting that there's an occasion in Luke 9 where James and John, the sons of thunder, they would have, if Jesus had let them, they would have duplicated Elijah's act. We're going to call down fire on these guys. That's what they want to do. No. But I mean, they were ready. That was their mood, if you will. But Jesus rebuked them. Let's talk a little bit about these identities. There were three people expected. In John chapter 1, there's a general expectation of either of Elijah or the Messiah or the prophet of Moses, Deuteronomy 18. And these Talmudic Messiah expectations are derived mostly from Malachi and elsewhere. Elijah, because that's the last words in the Old Testament, predicts that. And Moses was predicted, a prophet of Moses, in Deuteronomy 18. So these were three expectations that were extant in John chapter 1. Elijah, Moses, and the Messiah. And that was the question. And John the Baptist says, I'm not the Messiah. And he makes that declaration. Now, he didn't do all the things that Elijah was supposed to do. He did not turn the hearts of the children, as Malachi predicted, nor did he usher in the great and dreadful day, as Malachi. So that means that hasn't happened yet. That's the point that both John and I think I'm trying to make here. Well, there's a second issue about these two witnesses. It's interesting that there are two ministries in the Old Testament that were not allowed to finish. Moses was interrupted in Numbers 20 and Deuteronomy 3. And he didn't get to go in the Promised Land. In fact, his ministry was curtailed, if you will. Elijah also was incomplete. And you study 1 Kings 17 and 19 and then 2 Kings 2. And so, but the thing that is probably the most persuasive to me is there are unique miraculous powers. There's four of them, two for each of them. Elijah, most people who analyze this all agree on Elijah because he didn't die and that sort of fixed that. He'd show up again. Because he called down fire from heaven in 1 Kings 18 and 2 Kings 1 and so forth. He also shut heaven for 3.5 years. Everybody is sensitive to the fact that he caused the drought to end by bringing rain. But you don't pick it up from the Old Testament record, but from the New Testament allusions to that, you pick up that not only did he bring the rain, he was the one that stopped the rain for 3.5 years. Both in Luke 4 and in James 5. This is made a reference that he both shut the heavens, not just opened them. That's a subtlety, but and the reason it's so relevant, for how long did Elijah shut the heavens so it wouldn't rain? For 3.5 years. How long do the two witnesses show up? For the first half of the 70th week of Daniel, namely for 3.5 years. You see, it just too much ties together, for me at least, not to see that all tied together. Anyway, the other one, I think, is Moses. A lot of people disagree, but because he was the one that turned water into blood in Exodus 7, he's the one that had all kinds of plagues from Exodus 8 all the way to chapter 12. All the famous plagues were unique, distinctive, if you will, to Moses' ministry. So I think that's another reason I see them both as Moses and Elijah. Now there's a contrast here with these two witnesses in contrast to the church. The church are supposed to be ministers. The ministers are to be harmless. Philippians 2, Romans 16, all makes reference to that. Well, what's the contradiction here? The rapture's already taken place by the time you get to the 70th week of Daniel. So the church is in heaven. So the unique instructions to the church are not operative here. These guys play rough. When their enemies give them a hard time, they call, "Whew, that should be make a pretty exciting movie, wouldn't it?" They could have some fun with that one, probably. But again, as I want to remind, James and John they were willing to try to duplicate Elijah's acts, but Jesus rebuked them in Luke 9. Well, there's a final reason why I don't think it was necessarily Enoch. Everybody likes to say, well, they always think the two witnesses, well, Elijah, they all agree because he didn't die. Neither did Enoch, okay? Well, then they argue from Hebrews 9:27, which says that it is appointed unto man once to die, and after this the judgment. And they use that as an argument that this must be Enoch. No. There are a number of people that didn't die once. Lazarus, Jairus' daughter, the widow of Nain's son, and so on. And so that rule, that expression in Hebrews 9:27 is a refutation of reincarnation. The general pattern is man he dies once, and then comes the judgment. There are exceptions. Lazarus, Jairus' daughter, Nain's being an example, and it's for that reason that I don't think Enoch's in the picture here for a number of reasons. I think he really represents the church, and for a number of reasons. But also, first of all, he's a Gentile. The witnesses are Jewish. That'll disturb a lot of our Jewish friends, but that's a suggestion I put on the table. I suspect that Enoch was a model of the rapture. He was removed before the judgment of Noah, and he wasn't pre-flood or mid-flood or post-flood. He was pre-flood, right? Okay. Anyway, he was born and translated on the 6th of Sivan, which is the same as the Feast of Shavuot, which is the Feast of Pentecost. And there's a whole study about that you can get into where we study the feasts of Moses. I won't take the time to get into all that here. See, I also tend to regard the Transfiguration as a staff meeting. Jesus and these two witnesses are having a discussion, an extended discussion about the second coming. And so we know they've talked about second coming. That seems to be the allusion of Luke 9:31. Also 1 Peter 1 and 2 Peter 1, both Peter was really impressed with that. It shows up. He makes allusions to it in his first letter and in his second letter. And there you get the impression, the suggestive impression, that they were talking about the second coming. And lying behind all of this is a mystery, and I don't have the answer to it. Why did Michael contend with Satan for the body of Moses? That allusion occurs in Jude 9. We know that God buried Moses in Deuteronomy 34, at the close of that. So Michael is apparently fighting with Satan over the body of Moses. Why is this? It's nowhere in the Bible. We don't know when it happened, why it happened, whatever. It apparently did happen because Jude makes reference to it. And so there must be something distinctive about the body of Moses. And it may have something to do with his being resurrected, not resurrected in the glorious body sense, but brought back to life like Lazarus or Nain and so forth. We use the term resurrection to imply our glorified body, which is coming at the rapture. And Moses, the Old Testament saints aren't really resurrected in the true sense term until the second coming. But what's going on here? Don't know. A lot of guesses. Well, as far as these two witnesses are concerned, there's other suggestions some have. Some think it's John the Apostle and the writer of the Gospel of John. But in the book of Revelation, he's instructed, thou must prophesy again. So some people think that they build on that, the possibility maybe John is one of the two witnesses. I don't think he is, for a lot of reasons. But anyway, we include the Apostle of John in the church, which is in heaven. John was especially rebuked from desiring Elijah's acts. So I don't see John as one of the two witnesses. There's very few people I've come across that have it. Others think it might be John the Baptist. Even J. Vernon McGee suggests that as a possibility. And that surprises me for a number of reasons, but be that as it may. Had the nation accepted John the Baptist's ministry, he would have served as Elijah, that God sent. They would have also received Jesus. Instead, they rejected both of them and allowed them to be slain. So I don't think he's not my candidate for one of the two witnesses.